So, it's Christmas Eve. This was at least 40 years ago. I come down this chimney, and I'm getting my bearings to look for the tree. And there's a woman that's sitting in a chair right in front of me, holding the baby in her arms. Now, I'm not used to seeing too many people awake, and I usually have a sense of them being there before I pop in, so I just sort of freeze in my tracks, and I realize that this woman is staring right through me. Like, she knows I'm there, but there's absolutely no wonderment in her face. So my eyes move down her, and it becomes real apparent real quick that this baby is sick. And just as I look at him, he does that sort of weird jerky thing that babies do that scares the shit out of people who don't have kids. And then he lets out this horrible, raspy breath and just sort of lays still. So this woman gets up from her chair. She's like a tiny little Latino thing, maybe Puerto Rican. And she holds this baby up to me to take it from her arms. Now, whatever you might have heard about Santa knowing all the languages of the world, it's just not true. I know like a couple sentences in French and some cuss words in Italian. That's really about it. But she says something to me in Spanish, and she hands me this baby. It's an infant, like 3 months old. And this poor, tiny little thing is burning up with fever. I mean, it's just radiating off his head, and I can feel it through my mittens. He turned this horrible shade of red, and he was just barely breathing, and I didn't know what the hell to do. And then I heard her say, Beso, kiss. So I brought this baby up, and I kissed him on the tip of his nose. I really just touched my lips to it. And then I swear to you, by everything I hold sacred, that baby opened his eyes and smiled. And I smiled back, and I looked over at Mom, and she's sort of staring at me like I'm some kind of ghoul. And then that baby let out one last raspy breath and took in a good, clean, strong one. All better. In 10 seconds, that baby went from the brink of death to the model of health. That's the first time that I ever really realized what I was. Nobody had ever told me before. I was just figuring it out as I went. I mean, I knew I could scoop down chimneys I was way too fat for. I knew I could cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. I knew that my bag never seemed to weigh any more or less, and that every time I reached into it, I grabbed exactly what I wanted. But healing sick babies? Holding the very fabric of life within me? I figured out real quick that they never told me because they thought it might drive me crazy to know. And in many ways, they would have been perfectly correct. So, yeah, I started the whole St. Nicholas thing myself. That was the beginning of my blue period. What I usually refer to as the season of the paper Santa. Well, you can't actually change history. Changing the public's perception of history is another matter altogether. People have been doing it since the beginning of time. So I just started telling every third child that I had been a saint in a previous life, and that my gift was to live forever and to take care of them. No, it just sounded so much better than the truth at the time. I mean, you get tired of being a second-rate hero. I didn't see why I had to spend eternity as a deputy angel. Well, that whole thing, of course, blew up in my face like a vodka fart from an old hooker. Clearly, I should have considered the religious implications. But at the same time, who the hell thought that a story like that would work its way to the front of a myth that was already so skewed that nobody could keep track of it? I figured they would just tuck it between the elves and the magi and leave it be. Just sort of assimilate it. But instead, they made that my origin, and I'll be damned if at the end of the whole thing, I'm not back to working for the same powers I was trying to separate myself from to begin with. So now all of a sudden, I'm some fruity old man from Russia who loved all the children and the animals and dedicated his life to them and performed all these fucking miracles thousands of years ago. And over the course of generations and generations, I have slowly morphed into the modern day Santa Claus. So, in essence, by trying to magnify my legend, I only served in watering it further down. I spent a lot of time with a shotgun in my hand for about 4 years there. It made the help nervous. So anyway, since I'm not quite crazy enough to try anything like that again, I'm sort of stuck with the story as it stands. Don't even ask me about the Kris Kringle thing, because I have no idea where that should go.